Hey everyone. So given my blunder this morning, I wanted to record for you a kind of tutorial of some of the things that I wanted to go over with all of you this morning. Primarily going into more depth about how to use the library website, how to use the Oxford English Dictionary, and get some of your research done for this project. So the first thing that I want to start with is taking another look at the Oxford English Dictionary now that you've had a chance to look it over last week, and look specifically at how to use what you can find in it to then go and do some additional research in the library's card catalog and in the library's databases. So first, just as a reminder, you can get to the Oxford English Dictionary by going to the databases page. Then you can go to O, then scroll down, find Oxford English Dictionary, and just hit connect. I recommend saving this as a favorite perhaps, and then you can go directly to it. And if you're on campus, it might ask you to log in, but if you're on campus, it should just take you right there. So just a quick overview of what you can get in the Oxford English Dictionary, some useful information that would be worth reviewing and then discussing about your word, especially if you're doing a single word. So as an example, let's just look at the word gay, which some people are using in some of their projects, and look at the more common ones. So you can just click on it or hit view full entry, and you get all this information about the forms it is taken in. That's Middle English, etc. Down here you have like Anglo-Norman and Old French and Middle French and all this stuff. There's a lot of information here to sift through, so don't be too intimidated. But if you the entry profile. So here you can see when the word was first used between the year 1000 and 2000, with a little bit of information here about it. The origin, so we can see that it comes from French. And then right here, this is something to pay attention to, is the different definitions of the word gay, and then date ranges of when it was used to mean that in particular. So if you look all the way down here, senses C.5 A through B, a little garbly. That's what was most commonly used between 1953 and 2003. So that's going to be like our common usage now, one of them anyways. So you can click on it, and it'll take you right down there to Sense 5 slang. Chiefly in the prole, originally in the United States, a homosexual person. And reading through this will give you a sense of the different uses, and sort of looking at when you have a word with a lot of uses. But let's take a look at something that's not quite so common, just so you don't have to sift through all this clutter in figuring out how to use the OED. So someone in another class is working with the word personhood. So if we search for that, and they're looking at it, as you might guess, with relation to the controversy surrounding abortion and the recent legislation passed that uses the word personhood. And so this is, a lot simpler, so we can get a better look. As you can see, if we look at the entry profile, there's not as much going on here. The first use is way up here in 1944. First cited in the American Journal of Sociology. But let's take a look at this as an example of how you can use what you find about a word in the OED to then go and do some more research in the library and the card catalog and the databases. So take a look down here. We've got a basic definition, the quality or condition of being a person, especially personal identity or selfhood. So how did they get that definition? Well, look down here at the example sentences that they found. So the first one will always be the very earliest use of the word in print that the authors of the dictionary were able to find. So in this case, 1944. And the sentence that the word is used in. So in this case, the purpose of education is the development of personhood. So when you're using this dictionary, particularly for this assignment, think to yourself, if you read that sentence, what is your understanding of the word personhood? What does it mean there? So in this case, you might think like, okay, personhood, the purpose of education is the development of personhood. So that means personhood is something that's formed out of education, right? So you can kind of reverse engineer the meaning of the word from reading the sentence. Okay. Let's take a look at the next entry in 1956. So this example sentence, from there he proceeds to the machine-like properties of animals and so on up to responsible human personhood. Okay, so that's interesting. And so in this case, you can think about that phrase, responsible human personhood. So again, maybe a little different than that earlier usage, but generally the same sort of thing, that maybe this idea of personhood involves being a responsible human, so having some kind of nurtured or fostered sense of education or morality or something like that. Interesting. Okay. Now, fast forward up to 1993, and we get, don't they understand that I'm not just gay, I'm a person too, that my personhood is more important than my gayness. So here, this is kind of a different definition, and if you can see where the first two examples kind of track up to this, especially personal identity selfhood, maybe this later usage, closer to today, kind of links back to the general part of the definition, the quality or condition of being a person, or vice versa perhaps as well. So this is a little broader, and just the idea that my personhood is more important than my gayness. So instead of personhood being linked to something that you foster through education or that involves having sort of a sense of responsibility, here personhood is just more your general identity, and that you are a person, that you are a human being. So when you think about how the word personhood has been used recently to in legal disputes to include unborn fetuses in the sense of personhood, to say that they have personhood, that definition seems more like this later one. So, okay, how can you use these sample sentences then to guide your research in databases and in the library catalog? Well, think about the different contexts then, these different definitions. So, if this person, for instance, is researching the word personhood relative to the abortion debate, right? So they could just go in and, type personhood and abortion into the card catalog and see what comes up. But consider how you might be a little more nuanced. You're looking for personhood that has more to do with the idea of being a human, and maybe less necessarily with personhood as a sense of something developed and as a sense of developed education. So let's go back to the library website. Back another. So two possible things then, places where you can go from here to try and find more resources, more sources, books and articles, the card catalog, and databases. So let's take a look first at the library's digital card catalog. Remember, I think I mentioned last week, never use one search, it's just going to mess you up. So if you go here, and look, I already typed it in, personhood, right? So let's search for that and see what we get. Okay, so first entry here, oh, look at that, electronic resource, so you can get it at home even. Neoliberalism, personhood, post-socialism, enterprising selves in changing economies. So that might be a useful resource to look at, just because sometimes neoliberalism is something associated with abortion rights and that sort of thing. But let's look at what else we have here. The psychology of personhood, philosophical, historical, social, developmental, and narrative perspectives. So, I mean, pay attention to the fact that the word historical is in there. So this could be useful to look at how definitions of personhood have changed over time. And it sounds like, since you get things like philosophical and especially social developmental, this source is probably going to focus on some of those earlier definitions that you saw. So it'll inform a coverage of what those earlier definitions are. So you might want to look at it for that, for the earlier part of what you're going to write in summarizing the history of the use of the word personhood. If you want to look at more recent use, though, sources for that, we're probably going to have to look somewhere else. So, moving right along, okay, emotions and personhood, exploring fragility, making sense of vulnerability. Not sure. That could be useful, could be not. You'd have to check it out. The resilience engine, generating person, place, and power in virtual worlds. Hard to say there too, but probably going to lean towards those earlier definitions, so that might be a source for that. Up, down here, religious statues and personhood, testing the role of materiality. Hard to say as well, but so you get the idea, I think, of cultivating personhood, again, those earlier definitions. So you see a lot of what you're finding here is more related to those earlier definitions. Architecture, ethics, and personhood of place. It sounds interesting, but not sure it's going to be helpful for this. So, and always, try other things. Try different combinations of ones. So you can do personhood, abortion, like we mentioned. Let's see what might pop up. Abortion rights and fetal personhood. So that's probably going to be pretty useful for getting some information about more recent uses of the word. And, look at this. So 1989. So that's an even earlier use than these contemporary debates we're having right now, where personhood is being used with relation to abortion. So you get some useful stuff down in here. Okay. Let's consider then how we might use the databases, because there are a lot of these, right? A ton. So the best way to refine your search is to look right here, so you have all of these different options, and by narrowing it down to something like, say, political science or women, gender, and sexuality, you won't have to sift through so many databases and choosing which ones you might look at. So we want to look for uses of the word personhood that might be relevant to how the word is used in that community that you're researching. In this case, for this person, they're researching how the word personhood is used in the controversy surrounding abortion. So, it might be useful to look in law, but let's take a look at least first at political science and women, gender, and sexuality, because those both relate to the specific contexts that the word is being used in. So down here, women, gender, and sexuality, hit submit. Let's look at these. So you want to pick databases related to this to search through that you think will be even more relevant than just that general topic. So contemporary women's issues, read these descriptions down here. So this database provides full text access to global information on women, journals, newsletters, research reports. Okay, so that could be useful. Defining gender online, that might be useful. Family studies abstract. So if you think about abortion, for instance, that's something that may come in handy. So let's take a look here at this first one. So click on the database, and then it'll take you to whatever search page that database has. They'll all look different. But generally, so let's look through all the full text of the articles this database has access to. So personhood, boom. Oh, look at that. U.S. Supreme Court sides against women for corporate conscience. So that's an article taking a particular stance, but it will be useful because you can read it and get a sense for yourself, kind of like you did with Twitter, about how the word is being used. And some of these articles that consider the legal definition are going to be particularly useful for this topic, but really a lot of your topics, because it will address legal definitions of the word, since the definition of the word is so important to the dispute. So other things here, maybe excerpt from Patricia Miller's Good Catholics, The Battle Over Abortion in the Catholic Church, that could be useful. You'll find all kinds of things here, and you know, some of this is a tedious work of sifting through things, but just be thankful that you don't have to necessarily sift through thousands and thousands of pages of real books, since you can at least do these searches. Pretty handy, right? So if we go back, let's see, where else might we look? Defining gender, that could be useful. Click here, we can search for personhood. No results. Okay, so sometimes it's a dud. Where else? Feminist periodicals, that might have something. But, you know, let's go back and try out the political science databases. So you can scroll up, political science, submit. Okay. Academic Search Premier may pop up in more than one category. It does a really great job of collating all kinds of sources. So in this case, it's looking at particularly political science journals. So let's go ahead and click on that. Here, personhood, and again, this will search in just political science journals. Okay, so can a communitarian concept of African personhood be both relational and gender neutral? So that would relate to how those earlier senses of the word are still being used today. So it could be useful, but not necessarily focused on abortion. Ancestral personhood and moral justification, again, it kind of has that like educational, rational, moral valence. Beyond abortion, why the personhood movement implicates reproductive choice. So here's another article that could be useful for that. So I think, or at least I hope, by now you're getting a sense of ways that you can use these databases, ways that you can use the catalog, and how you can use the Oxford English Dictionary and the definitions in there to focus on what you're researching and to give you some ideas about what to go looking for in the card catalog and in the databases. So, all right. Let me know if any of you have any questions. Let me know if any of you want to meet. I'm more than happy to meet with you whenever you would like and that I'm available. And I hope this was helpful.